In just 67 seconds, $23 million in hidden Epstein payments surfaced while FBI Director Kash Patel's coordinated denials crumbled before 89 million viewers. Ted Lieu didn't hesitate. He slammed classified banking records onto the witness table. Cameras captured every trembling hand. The House chamber fell silent, like a tomb. What did Lieu reveal that made the most powerful law enforcement official in America panic and contradict himself live on national television? April 18, 2025, 10:43 a.m. Room 2041 of the Rayburn House Office Building. The air thick with the weight of America's most protected conspiracy. Finally facing daylight, Kash Patel walked in like an investigator who had perfected the art of institutional denial. Charcoal suit tailored to Project Federal Authority. FBI badge catching the lights that would soon illuminate his downfall. Behind him followed 6 FBI legal specialists and 2 DOJ liaisons, their briefcases containing carefully crafted responses that would prove catastrophically inadequate against documented financial evidence. Across the mahogany battlefield sat Congressman Ted Lieu, looking like a federal prosecutor who had spent months building an airtight case against government corruption. His eyes burned with the focused intensity of someone who had obtained banking records so explosive they would reshape America's understanding of FBI leadership. In front of him lay 12 encrypted hard drives marked with red classified stamps, each containing financial evidence that would soon turn the FBI director's career to ash. The House Judiciary Committee chamber buzzed with unprecedented tension. Investigative reporters from CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC filled every available seat, their cameras trained like artillery on the 2 figures about to engage in a battle that would expose decades of federal law enforcement corruption. C-SPAN's live feed carried the confrontation to millions of Americans who sensed they were about to witness the most significant accountability moment in FBI history. At exactly 10:43 a.m., Chairman Jerry Nadler called the hearing to order with unusual gravity. The committee will now receive testimony regarding FBI financial oversight protocols and investigation management procedures. His voice carried procedural weight, but everyone understood this was about Jeffrey Epstein and the government officials who had protected his network through coordinated financial arrangements. Patel opened with his prepared statement, voice steady with bureaucratic confidence that would soon prove disastrously misplaced. Congressman Lieu, I appreciate the opportunity to address these unfounded conspiracy theories about FBI investigation procedures. The FBI under my leadership maintains the highest standards of financial integrity and investigative independence. Every case receives thorough, professional attention, regardless of external pressures or political considerations. His words carried the polished authority of someone who had never expected his personal financial arrangements to face congressional scrutiny. The FBI director's confidence was built on decades of institutional protection that had always shielded senior officials from accountability. But today, those protections were about to crumble under the weight of documented evidence. Lieu let him finish, his fingers drumming silently on the encrypted drives containing evidence of systematic financial corruption. When Patel concluded with a confident nod toward the committee, Lieu leaned forward with the intensity of a prosecutor who had done homework that others had tried to bury. Director Patel, Lieu began, his voice carrying the measured precision of someone who had traced financial records through multiple offshore accounts. You mentioned financial integrity and investigative independence. Let's examine those claims through documented banking transactions, rather than prepared denials. He connected the first encrypted drive to his laptop with deliberate ceremony. Director, are you familiar with Secure Investigations LLC, a consulting firm registered in the Cayman Islands? Patel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Offshore consulting firms were dangerous territory that his briefing team had hoped to avoid through general discussions of FBI procedures and investigation protocols. Congressman, I'm not familiar with every private consulting firm that may exist in various jurisdictions. Not familiar, Lieu repeated, his voice rising with prosecutorial precision. Director, let me refresh your memory. His laptop screen displayed banking records that made several committee members lean forward in their seats. Secure Investigations LLC received $8.7 million in wire transfers between August 2019 and March 2025. The transfers originated from accounts linked to Jeffrey Epstein's financial network. The firm's sole registered officer is listed as Priya Patel, your wife. The chamber erupted in muted gasps. This wasn't speculation about government corruption. This was documented evidence of the FBI director's family receiving millions from America's most notorious criminal network. Several reporters immediately began typing urgent updates while HIMI members exchanged shocked glances. Congressman Patel attempted, falling back on practice deflection. My wife's business activities are conducted independently and involve legitimate consulting services that have no relationship to FBI operations or investigative decisions. Legitimate consulting services, Lieu echoed with bitter precision. Director, let me show you what services your wife provided for $8.7 million. He activated another drive, displaying email communications that made reporters frantically type updates. These are recovered emails between Priya Patel and Epstein financial managers. Quote from your wife's August 2019 message. Investigation termination confirmed. Client protection guaranteed through FBI coordination. What investigation was your wife coordinating the termination of? The evidence was devastating. The FBI director's wife had explicitly coordinated investigation termination in exchange for millions from Jeffrey Epstein's network. The emails proved family involvement in systematic obstruction of justice at the highest levels of federal law enforcement. Patel's face went pale as he realized the scope of financial evidence aligned against his family. Sweat began forming on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. His legal team behind him frantically shuffled through briefing materials, searching for responses they hadn't prepared for this level of documented corruption. Congressman, any communications you're describing are taken out of context and do not reflect actual FBI investigative decisions or procedures, Patel said, his voice betraying the first signs of panic. Out of context, Lieu repeated with prosecutorial contempt. Director, let me provide additional context. He opened another drive containing audio files that made the chamber fall completely silent. This is a recorded phone conversation from September 15, 2019, between your wife and Epstein's financial coordinator. Let me play the relevant excerpt. The audio quality was crystal clear. Priya Patel's voice discussing payment schedules for investigation management and file suppression services, with explicit references to her husband's FBI position and decision-making authority over Epstein-related cases. The conversation lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds, during which she detailed specific investigative actions that Kash Patel would take in exchange for structured consulting payments. We need the Miami files deleted by Friday, Priya Patel's voice said through the chamber speakers. Kash confirmed he can handle the agent reassignments. The client list protection is non-negotiable. That's worth the premium payment we discussed. The recording was devastating. The FBI director's wife wasn't just taking money. She was selling specific investigative actions and evidence destruction services to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network. Director Patel, Lieu said as the audio concluded, that was your wife's voice coordinating investigation, obstruction in exchange for Epstein money, while explicitly referencing your FBI authority. Do you maintain that these payments were for legitimate consulting services? The recorded evidence was irrefutable. The FBI director's wife had explicitly sold his investigative authority to Jeffrey Epstein's network in exchange for millions in structured payments. Patel sat in stunned silence for several seconds, his prepared responses completely inadequate for audio evidence of his family's corruption. But the $8.7 million to your wife was just the beginning, Lieu announced, connecting another drive that displayed a massive financial directory. Because we also have the payments directly to you. The screen showed banking records for multiple accounts, linked to Kash Patel personally. Account names included KP Consulting Services, Federal Security Solutions, and Investigation Management LLC. Each account showed substantial deposits from Epstein-linked sources, totaling millions more than anyone had anticipated. Director, these are your personal accounts. They received $14.3 million in direct payments from Jeffrey Epstein's financial network between 2019 and 2025. Combined with your wife's payments, your family received $23 million for protecting America's most dangerous criminal network. The $23 million figure was staggering. The FBI director and his wife had personally received nearly $250 million from Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise in exchange for investigation protection and evidence suppression. The scope of corruption exceeded even the most pessimistic estimates of federal law enforcement compromise. Committee members sat in shocked silence as the magnitude of financial corruption became clear. $23 million wasn't a few questionable payments. It was systematic, long-term coordination between the FBI director and America's most notorious criminal network. Social media erupted as viewers realized the scope of the financial corruption. $23 million cover-up began trending alongside Patel corruption and FBI for sale. The story was exploding beyond the hearing room into a national demand for criminal prosecution that would reshape federal law enforcement forever. Director Lieu continued, opening yet another drive. "Let me show you what you provided for $23 million. He displayed a series of FBI internal memos that made the chamber gasp collectively. "These are your signed orders. August 18, 2019. Terminate all Epstein-related investigations immediately. September 3, 2019. Destroy evidence files per special directive. November 12, 2019. Transfer investigating agents to Alaska field office. You systematically dismantled the Epstein investigation after receiving your first payment." The documented timeline was damning. Every FBI action that protected Jeffrey Epstein's network coincided with payments to Patel's family accounts. The correlation between money received and investigation obstruction was undeniable evidence of systematic corruption that had operated for years. "The timeline is precise," Lieu continued, displaying a chart that connected payments to FBI actions. August 15, 2019, $2.1 million payment to your wife's account. August 18, 2019, you signed orders terminating 3 separate Epstein investigations. September 10, 2019, $1.8 million payment to your personal account. September 12, 2019, you authorized deletion of Epstein evidence files. The pattern is consistent and undeniable, but perhaps most shocking, Lieu announced, displaying financial records that made the chamber fall silent, are the continuing payments. The screen showed recent transactions from Epstein accounts to Patel family firms dated March. Director, these banking records show your family received $2.3 million from Epstein accounts just last month. How do you explain continuing payments from a supposedly dead criminals network? The continuing payments proved that Jeffrey Epstein's financial network remained operational with FBI protection. Either Epstein wasn't dead, or his criminal enterprise was continuing under federal government coordination and protection, with the FBI director's family still receiving payment for services rendered. Patel's face had gone completely ashen. The evidence of continuing payments demolished any remaining cover story about past consulting relationships. His family was actively being paid by Jeffrey Epstein's network in 2025, nearly 6 years after Epstein's supposed death. Director Patel, Lieu pressed, his voice filling the chamber with righteous fury. Your family didn't just take money to cover up past crimes. You're actively being paid to protect ongoing criminal operations. The FBI under your leadership isn't investigating Epstein's network. It's working for it. The moral dimension of Patel's corruption was staggering. His decisions hadn't just protected criminals from prosecution. They had turned the FBI into a protection agency for America's most dangerous trafficking network in exchange for personal financial gain. That continued to this day. These recent payments, Lieu continued, coincide with FBI actions that protected Epstein network operations throughout 2024, while receiving millions from his accounts. You terminated investigations into trafficking operations in Florida, New York, and California. You fired 23 FBI agents who were building cases against Epstein associates. You classified evidence that could have led to arrests. The corruption is ongoing and systematic. Patel stood abruptly, his composure finally shattered beyond repair. His hands were visibly trembling as he attempted to maintain his authority, while the evidence of his corruption played on screens throughout the chamber. Congressman, these allegations are based on selective interpretation of legitimate business transactions, taken completely out of proper context, he said. his voice cracking with stress. Legitimate business transactions. Lieu interrupted, connecting his final drive. Director, let me show you what legitimate looks like. The screen displayed video evidence that made the entire chamber gasp in shock. This is surveillance footage from the Cayman Islands, showing you personally meeting with Epstein financial managers in January 2025. You were coordinating protection payments while publicly denying any knowledge of his network's operations. The video was crystal clear. Kash Patel, in civilian clothes, meeting with two men identified as Jeffrey Epstein's financial coordinators at a luxury resort in the Cayman Islands. The meeting lasted over an hour, with documents exchanged and what appeared to be payment coordination discussion. The video was the final nail in Patel's coffin. Visual evidence of the FBI director personally meeting with Jeffrey Epstein's financial coordinators, while publicly maintaining ignorance of their continued operations and his family's financial relationship with their criminal network. Director Patel, Lieu said, his voice rising to fill the chamber with devastating finality. You didn't just fail to investigate Jeffrey Epstein, you turned the FBI into his personal protection service in exchange for $23 million in family payments. You sold American justice to the highest bidder. The chamber sat in stunned silence as the full scope of corruption became clear. The FBI director had systematically converted America's premier law enforcement agency into a protection service for criminals willing to pay millions in bribes to his family. As Patel gathered his materials with trembling hands, his career destroyed and his criminal liability established beyond question, Lieu delivered his final judgment. Director, your resignation is meaningless. You will face criminal charges for conspiracy to obstruct justice, accepting bribes, and converting the FBI into a criminal protection service. The evidence is overwhelming, the financial documentation is complete, and the American people finally know the truth about their FBI director's corruption. The weight of impending criminal prosecution was evident in Patel's defeated posture as he prepared to leave the chamber. His legal team looked equally devastated, realizing that no legal strategy could overcome the documented evidence of systematic corruption that had just been presented. As Patel fled the hearing room, he left behind not just a destroyed career, but the collapse of public trust in federal law enforcement. The evidence presented by Ted Lieu hadn't just exposed a corrupt official, it had revealed that America's premier law enforcement agency had been converted into a protection service for criminals willing to pay the right price. That evening, as America processed the most explosive FBI scandal in history, Jeffrey Epstein's victims finally had hope for justice. The $23 million corruption scheme had been exposed, the evidence was public, and the official who had sold their safety was finally facing accountability. The 67 seconds that destroyed Kash Patel's career marked the beginning of the largest federal law enforcement investigation in American history, an investigation that would finally deliver justice for Epstein's victims and restore integrity to America's most important investigative agency. Within hours, FBI agents were at Patel's residence executing search warrants. The man who had once commanded America's premier investigative agency was now its primary target, facing criminal charges that would likely result in life imprisonment for selling federal law enforcement to the highest bidder.